After so many scandals, so many questionable actions and events, is this really the one that might sink the Trump presidency? Today, the president was his bullish self, but then again, when isn't he?
It's all a hoax, folks. It's all a big hoax.
The Democratic leadership seem to think that this time it is different. The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has started a process that many in her party wanted to see happen months ago. Leon Neyfakh is a connoisseur of American political scandals. As the host of a wildly popular podcast, he's catalogued many like Watergate and the Clinton impeachment. He says that Democrats have now decided enough is enough.
There's just a lot less ambiguity on this one than anything we've seen before. And I think they're also, responding to a growing clamor among the Democratic base that has wanted impeachment for a long time.
The scandal that's triggered this impeachment inquiry process dates back to a phone conversation on the 25th of July between President Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine. A US intelligence advisor inside the White House who was, as part of his duties, listening in on the call, was so alarmed by what he heard that he raised a formal complaint with his superiors. This is what's known as the whistleblower complaint. Today, in response to this growing political scandal, President Trump, from his office here in New York, ordered the release of the transcript of the conversation with the Ukrainian president. It makes extraordinary reading. The President of the United States clearly asked the head of a foreign government for help in digging the dirt on a political opponent. In May 2014, Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, was hired by a Ukrainian gas company, Burisma Holdings, as a board member. He was reportedly paid $50,000 a month. He stopped working with the company earlier this year. At the same time, his father, the vice president, was pursuing an anti-corruption agenda in Ukraine. President Trump alleges that this was actually to further his son's business interests. So far, no evidence has been produced to support this allegation. In the transcript, the president mentions to Mr. Zelensky how Joe Biden lobbied Ukraine in 2016, when he was vice president, to fire its top prosecutor, Viktor Shokin. Shokin's office had opened an investigation into Burisma. Other Western officials had called for Mr. Shokin to be fired because of the perception that he was too soft on corruption. The transcript quotes the president as saying, "The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son. That Biden stopped the prosecution and a lot of people want to find out about it. So whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me." The call occurred days after Mr. Trump directed the US government to withhold military aid to Ukraine.
In fact, when you read it, it seems, I don't know, as damning as I could have imagined it being. Furthermore, there's ellipses throughout. There are, to indicate that there was other things said that are not reflected in the notes.
So how will the impeachment process work? What Nancy Pelosi has triggered is an inquiry by the House of Representatives into the scandal. 6 congressional committees will look for evidence. If they find it in sufficient quantity and quality, the House as a whole will vote on articles of impeachment, individual charges of wrongdoing. If any of these get a majority in the House, they will pass to the Senate, which will then sit as a court with senators as the jury. A conviction on any of the articles of impeachment requires 67 of the 100 senators to vote guilty. That would mean convincing at least 20 Republican senators to vote with the Democrats.
Good morning, everybody.
So will enough Republicans abandon the president on this matter? Well, at the moment, it doesn't sound like it.
For this speaker to be going down this path and for the Democratic caucus to be going down this path before they have seen any evidence at all is something that I think is absolutely unprecedented in our history.
President Zelensky was at the UN in New York today.
No, you heard that we had, I think, good phone call. It was normal. We spoke about many things, and so I think, and you read it, that nobody pushed it.
The complexity of previous scandals like the Mueller investigation into collusion with Russia have largely, it seems, left voters cold. But this one is simple. Mr. Trump asked a foreign government to dig for dirt on his enemies, clearly and on the record. There is obviously more to come, but there might be enough already.
That was David Grossman. And Anthony Scaramucci is Donald Trump's former director of communications turned vocal critic of the president. And in a moment, we'll speak to Liz Harrington with the Republican National Committee. Anthony Scaramucci, quite a risky move, this, for the Democrats. The transcript doesn't seem to be a slam dunk. This could end nowhere.
You must be reading something differently than I'm reading. I mean, he's got everything, every fact set is conjoined to have committed a crime and actual treason to the United States. So let's just go over the fact set. He stopped the money, the military aid, a week before the phone call. On the phone call, he's not going to directly ask for a quote-unquote quid pro quo, but if you look at the semblance of the facts, he basically asked for that. And it's a clear violation of everything that the chief executive of the United States should stand for. So we'll have to see what the inspector general now says and what's in the whistleblower report. But I think the evidence is quite damning, actually.
But essentially, it is a political move, as you know, and it is, in some ways, right from the Steve Bannon playbook. He would love the 2020 election to be all about impeachment, and Donald Trump then becomes the hero of the people again. Are you going to play right into your old friend's hands?
Okay, well, that's, yeah, I guess maybe we're reading different parts of history, but I mean, if you're going to impeach the President of the United States, and there's a Liz pendants of treasonous things that he's done to seek his removal from office, that's going to heavily damage him. It's not the Clinton impeachment, which is after the re-election, and he curried some favor in a midterm election. The Clinton impeachment, in fact, likely damaged significantly Vice President Al Gore. So I don't know. We may be reading history differently. I actually care more about the facts on the ground. For me, it's just holding an objective standard to the situation.
Well, it's extraordinary.
Guys like Ben Sass.
Even just hearing that you want him damaged.
Mitt Romney see it the way I do.
Yeah. Last time we spoke, you rebuked me for not saying Mr. President. You were incredibly loyal. Now you're talking about wanting him damaged. Mr. President.
Hold on a second. I still call him Mr. President. When you say I want him damaged, I'm looking at the facts objectively. And so last time that we spoke, I think I was in this studio with you face to face. I was very supportive of the president. The president fired me 2 years ago. I tried to stay very loyal and very supportive of him, but I'm not a politician. When the facts are changing and the actions and the motive of the president are moving, I think like an entrepreneur. I don't think like a politician. At the end of the day, we hired him to do a job. He's not doing the job. He's not upholding to his oath to the U.S. Constitution. And so you got to fire a guy like that. It's just that simple. It's not,
well, I wonder
there's nothing personal about that. It's just, okay, guy's not doing the job. He's acting crazy.
You think that,
You're watching the same... Emily, hold on a second. You're watching the same speeches I'm watching. You're watching the same press conferences.
Well, what I want to know is whether you think Congress will follow that same turn that you have done. There must be, 20 Republicans that to get him impeached have to basically go the way you've gone. I mean, we've seen it here with the Conservative Party. They've left rather than, suffer something they didn't like. Do you think they will in the U.S.?
Yeah, of course they're going to do that. His real clear politic average is stuck at around 41, 42% if you look at the average. As it continues to trend down, and you saw the Axios report over the weekend, 69% of the American people dislike him, even the ones that potentially could vote for him. He's got 70% of the American people disliking him. You tell me, are there more people outside the United States that dislike him than inside the United States?
Right.
I mean, he's the most hated guy in our civilization right now. Okay, so let's just
we've got to go to Liz.
For what they are.
Anthony, thanks very much indeed. Liz Harrington, this doesn't look too good. 69% of the people, even those who vote for him, dislike him. Liz, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Sure. So it doesn't look like it's a political move anymore. This is about national security. So your politicians must now be thinking, is this man safe?
Absolutely. He's been safe. He's been a great steward of our great booming economy, and for national security, he's been extremely tough on Russia, for that matter. The Democrats have had one mission since November 9th, 2016, and that has been to find a reason, no matter how flimsy, to impeach this president before he was even inaugurated. But I would advise Democrats the next time they actually go down the path of impeachment, first they should take a look at the facts, take a look at the evidence, and maybe take a look in the mirror. Because if you're asking about a quid pro quo, you have Joe Biden on tape talking about withholding $1 billion from Ukraine. If you're talking about soliciting dirt on your political opponent from foreign nationals, let's talk to Hillary Clinton. Let's talk to the Democrat
let's stay
National
with this
Committee.
Subject, shall we? Because the
that
phone
is
call
exactly what they
has
did
been
with
compared
Ukraine.
to a mob shakedown. I'm sure you've read those comments too. The implications of what might happen if President Trump is not obeyed. I mean, it doesn't look good for him, whatever happens next.
What the biggest takeaway from this transcript, which was an unprecedented move for transparency on the president's part, the biggest takeaway is that he asked Ukraine to cooperate with an ongoing, legitimate investigation that Attorney General William Barr is conducting on the origins of the Russia probe, which we know involved disinformation paid for by the Democrats from Russia. We know it involved information from Ukraine, working with Nellie Orr, working with Fusion GPS, working with the DNC. Ukraine is heavily involved with election meddling in 2016. This was an issue that Democrats used to care a lot about until it turned the story turned on them.
Liz Harrington, we've got no evidence of anything from the Joe Biden tape, so we'll leave it there. But thank you very much indeed.